Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson has officially requested a trade. He wants out of Houston. This is on the heels of the Texans hiring a new head coach, David Culley, yesterday. But Max and Stephen A., as Adam said, it had nothing to do with the coaching hiring. This had been in place for weeks, maybe even months. Adam, as always, brought a lot of information to us. Max, I'll start with you. What was your biggest takeaway from what he shared?
That Deshaun Watson is open to many possibilities as destinations. Since he has a no-trade clause, he could shoot a lot of those down. But if he's open to a lot of different possibilities, then actually the Texans might come out of this okay. On the one hand, they look awful because how do you blow it with Deshaun Watson? Everyone knows that's on you. That ain't on Deshaun Watson. So that makes them look like the worst organization in the NFL right now, and that's saying something. There's some pretty dysfunctional organizations. You know, on the other hand, Caserio comes in, the new GM, with a trade that is going to net him, I would think, conservatively, 3 first-round picks. I would think that's where the bidding starts, since there are going to be so many bidders. And you just think, Molly, we're Giants fans, and Daniel Jones didn't show a lot of improvement in year 2. But even if he did, you give everything you got for Deshaun Watson. Because if you have a really good coach and Deshaun Watson, you're going to make the playoffs every year. And if you have a good coach in Deshaun Watson and a competent GM, you're going to be Super Bowl contenders. When the odds come out preseason every year, you're going to be among the favorites to make a Super Bowl run. And that's what every fan in every NFL city wants, with the exception of fans in Kansas City. There's no fan base that wouldn't be, whose quarterback situation overall wouldn't be improved by bringing in Deshaun Watson.
Couple of things that jumped out before I say anything else, and we'll get into this a little bit later. I think the Jets, with the number 2 overall pick, the number 23 overall pick, the 34th overall pick, along with Sam Darnold, is an option that puts them in a pristine position. I think the Miami Dolphins, with the number 3 pick, the number 18 overall pick, along with a second-round pick and Tua Tagovailoa, I think that's another option. A third option would be, and I don't see this happening, if the Jacksonville Jaguars were somehow willing to unload their number 1 overall pick, a.k.a. Trevor Lawrence, a Clemson national champion, and obviously a stud for another guy who's a Clemson national champion and a stud in Deshaun Watson. If they were willing to unload picks and it included the number 1 overall pick, I don't see that happening, but that's an option as well. Those are the 3 things that jump out of my mind. But more importantly, as it pertains to your direct question, Molly, as to what Adam Schefter had to say and what we're to peel from that, the thing that really resonates with me was the fact that he said multiple players, many players, feel the same way Deshaun Watson does. That tells me all I need to know about the Houston Texans organization. We have a state of emergency in the National Football League, ladies and gentlemen. And that state of emergency is that there is something going on in Houston that players are very turned off by. And when the star quarterback wants out, and clearly he's made that known for weeks, and now he's willing to come out and announce it, even in the aftermath of hiring a black coach that's been in the National Football League for 27 years. And David Culley, we got a problem. Something's going on in that organization. Something happened, okay? And even though Adam Schefter gave us some increments, he gave us some nuggets and what have you, clearly, like he said, it's not even scratching the surface. There's more to this than that, but he wasn't willing to go that far because you want to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's before you really unload on the Houston Texans organization in terms of specificity. But in the end, what it comes down to is that J.J. Watt, a pillar of the community, you understand, an all-pro, a future Hall of Famer, somebody who, until Deshaun Watson arrived and ascended, was the absolute positive face of this organization, walked across the locker room to personally apologize to Deshaun Watson for the team wasting his talents. I suspect that if J.J. Watt did that, it wasn't just because of what transpired on the football field. It's something far more reaching than that. The Houston Texans have a serious problem on their hands. I don't know how far it goes, but this is as bad as it gets. And I challenge anybody to show me a National Football League team where you had, it appears to be damn near mutiny going on there, okay? Usually it's just because the team stinks. That's not what's going on here. It's something far more. I mean, Bill O'Brien, who is in a lot of people's eyes, guys, is considered a culprit. He left football. He left pro football altogether and went back to college. He went to hide behind Nick Saban at Alabama, for crying out loud. I mean, something is going on with the Houston Texans. We need some details. Something ain't right, because this is as bad as I've seen it.
That's exactly why, real quick, Max, I just want to say that I asked Adam Schefter that exact question. Are they worried about this potentially getting out? And if that's creating some leverage also for Deshaun Watson? Because we don't have any of these details, but obviously we know it all smells. Go ahead, Max.
Well, today, you know, what was the headline going to be about the Texans? That they hired a coach. And that coach, by the way, after no African-American head coaching hires this season, was an African-American head coach. It did not escape my attention, nor Stephen A's, nor yours, Molly, that he's 65 years old. And while you feel very happy for him, the fact of the matter is, if you hire a 65-year-old, your long-term plans, that ain't a 10-year plan. As Stephen A said, maybe that's not even a 5-year plan. He's like the third or fourth oldest coach there is. So, is it coincidence that coaching hire is made with a guy that age and then announced for today's news cycle? And then Deshaun Watson's like, oh, wait a minute. It seems to me a coaching decision like that is meant to make the organization look good for those who aren't willing to look a little deeper into it, to consider the age and all that kind of stuff. It puts a nice face on it. Look, we hired an African-American coach. And that they would sort of win that news cycle. And when Deshaun Watson announced, well, I want out of here. Well, what do you want? So it seems to me that there's also a battle going on to kind of put a spin on it, to put a good face on it between Deshaun Watson and the Texans.
I'll say it more directly than you just did, Max. What Deshaun Watson appears, because we don't know, but what he appears to be saying is, don't try to pull an okie doke on us. There's a problem with black people in this organization, with the treatment of black athletes within this organization. And you hiring a black coach, we ain't going to let you gloss over the problem that's been permeating throughout this organization for a little while. That appears to be what he was saying. This is the same organization that once had a black GM. And Bill O'Brien basically got him booted out of there, and Rick Smith. So we don't know what the hell has been going on with that organization for the last several years. But I alluded to that a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to flat out say it right now. I don't know, but it's a legitimate question because, as you just pointed out, Max, the timing seems a tad bit odd. On the day you hire an African-American to be the head coach of your franchise, the star quarterback who happens to be an African-American feels the need to publicize something that he privately told you weeks earlier. I find that to be more than a mere coincidence. And it ain't against David Culler. What it is about Deshaun Watson saying, Houston, Texas, you ain't getting away with this. Hell no. Something's going on with this organization, and people need to know. That is what appears to be what Deshaun Watson is trying to say here.
What it all adds up to is dysfunction, at least at this moment. If they trade him for minimum 3 first-round picks and more stuff, a competent GM should be able to rebuild that franchise, also with young players who may not be as disgruntled because they didn't just live through what just happened. You bring up J.J. Watt as a pillar in the community, and certainly he's that, and that's well known. He's also one of the greatest players who ever lived. J.J. Watt in his prime. When you talk about the greatest defenders ever, he is on an extremely short list.
And he's no scrub now.
Let's not forget, not before there was Aaron Donald, and before Watt got hurt, we were asking, is he as great as Lawrence Taylor for his position? That kind of stuff. Multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, MVP caliber player. When that guy, with his impeccable reputation on and off the field, goes and apologizes to the quarterback, it looks bad. But the young guys coming in who they're going to draft didn't experience that culture. So if they get a bevy of draft picks, maybe could fix it. But at this moment, this is dysfunction, a disrespect toward the quarterback. You remember, Stephen A., when I got on the Knicks for alienating Kristaps Porzingis to the point where he wanted to trade? Mm-hmm. This is much worse than that. This is the face of your franchise, a star quarterback, a great player in his prime, who you alienated both by disrespecting him and by fielding a non-competitive team. And even when you fielded that team, the reason it was was non-competitive is because you once again disrespected him. You not only made a stupid trade of DeAndre Hopkins where you didn't get enough back, but you didn't even tell him. He had to find out on social media. The Texans look at this moment totally dysfunctional.
Absolutely. Stephen A., let me ask you this, and I know you mentioned it quickly earlier, but in case folks at home are just joining us, what team needs to call the Texans first to get Deshaun Watson?
I think it needs to be the New York Jets desperately. If I'm the New York Jets, I offer the number 2 overall pick. I offer the number 23 overall pick. I offer them the second round pick that I have, which I believe is at number 34, and Sam Darnold for Deshaun Watson. I offer all of that. And if I got to throw in a first-round pick for next year, I do that too. To get Deshaun Watson quarterbacking for Robert Saleh's team, I definitely pull that off, no question about it, because the culture change is in the midst of taking place in New York. And if I'm Deshaun Watson, that might be an attractive commodity for me. That's number one. Number two, if I'm the Miami Dolphins, if I'm Deshaun Watson, that's very attractive to me. Chris Greer, an African-American GM, Brian Flores, an African-American head coach. They're the guys that are the faces of the franchise. And instead of Tua Tagovailoa, I get Deshaun Watson to be my quarterback. Excuse me, that's a huge deal as well. If I'm the New York Jets and I'm the Miami Dolphins, I'm on the call right now. I would have been on the call 2-3 weeks ago, and I make that deal. And if I'm the Miami Dolphins, I offer the number 3 pick. I offer the number 18 pick. I offer Tua Tagovailoa as well. I offer all of that to get Deshaun Watson. If I'm the New Orleans Saints, as my man Anthony Mackie, the extraordinary actor who was on my show Stephen A's World the other day, he pointed out, because he's a New Orleans native, he's like, you trade the farm to try to get Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson with Michael Thomas and the rest of, and Alvin Kamara and the rest of the crew, to, because we are assuming that Drew Brees is going to retire. If not, next year's his last year. Deshaun Watson comes, then you tell Drew Brees you got to retire whether you like it or not, because Deshaun Watson would be the future. Of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars as well, even though I'm not sure I would do anything if I were them, because if I'm about to get Trevor Lawrence, excuse me, I just roll with that. But the Jets, definitely the Miami Dolphins. My Steelers don't have enough to offer. I doubt New Orleans has enough to offer. Those are the 4 teams that come to my mind that desperately need him, along with the Chicago Bears and the San Francisco 49ers. But the Jets and Miami would be the top 2 teams that should be trying to work out this deal.
Most teams actually, I think, do have enough to offer if you spin it forward. You just give up draft picks in the future, and whoever comes up with the most will land Deshaun Watson, you would think, if they're good picks. I would say this, Molly, to answer the question, it's much easier to talk about who shouldn't trade for Deshaun Watson, because almost every team should. Not the Chiefs, because Mahomes is better. Same age group and even better than Deshaun Watson. He's the only one. The Packers have Aaron Rodgers. He's 37 years old. They drafted Jordan Love. Maybe he turns out to be terrific. The odds are he'll never be good as Deshaun Watson. No knock against him. Just Deshaun Watson is, very few players ever get that good. So yeah, the Packers, just name a team that wouldn't. Maybe the Bills, just because they like their guy. I think Watson's better than Josh Allen, but if I'm the Bills, given Allen's, I like my guy. Same thing with the Bengals. Burrow gets back. You really like what you've seen. The Chargers have Herbert. You like what you see, and they're on rookie deals. If you have Trevor Lawrence coming in, who did at least as well as Deshaun Jackson at the same program, you keep him, right? It's easier to identify teams that wouldn't trade for Deshaun Watson than teams that should. Because other than the teams I mentioned, maybe the Seahawks, because they have Russell Wilson and he's still got plenty of prime left, you would think. Who else? Who else would you sit there and say they shouldn't trade for Deshaun Watson? When Adam Schefter said 25 teams, I think it's probably something like that, maybe 22 or 23. But if he's truly open to going to a bunch of teams, it's much easier to talk about the teams that shouldn't deal for him, because it's a much shorter list than the teams who should, which is almost the entire NFL.
Yeah. I'll just wrap it up by saying this, guys. Last season, Watson put up career highs in completion percentage, passing yards, total touchdowns. He's accounted for 83% of the team's offense. That's the highest rate of any player in NFL history in a single season.
Well,
the guy's special.
Molly,
go ahead, Stephen.
Let's not forget one thing, too, because, Max, we keep talking. Let's remember, he has a no-trade clause. So we can talk about what the Houston Texans can get. But if Deshaun Watson doesn't want to go there, it doesn't matter. He has to want to go someplace. And that's why it's incredibly important to point out the teams like the Jets, the New York market, the Miami Dolphins, African-American GM, and head coach. You point out those things. Washington football team. Why? You got a black man that's a president, all right? You got a minority in Ron Rivera, who's a well-respected head coach in the nation's capital as well. And now you have a black GM in Martin Mayhew. All of these things are relevant because, again, we're peeling off from where he would be coming from, which is the Houston Texans organization. Clearly, it's not just about football. It's a bad season. You can move forward. You can turn things around. He does not want to be a part of this organization because on a personal level, they are distasteful in his eyes, to say the very least. That speaks volumes to me. And that's why you got to take those teams into consideration.
No question. And as